Hi, I'm Rachel Rowland. I'm here with my dad, Charlie Daniels. He's the founder and president of Churches by Daniels Construction. It's a national church building construction company. And Dad, your dad was a pastor. When he got ready to build, how did he deal with getting his project started and committees and things like that?
Well, my dad was a little different. Uh, my dad was a pastor, and he was. It was another time and another place, and he was more of a pioneer, and so he would go to a church, and uh, he would have it on his heart to build, and he would start the church, and he would start building. Uh, he would start with sometimes he'd build a parsonage, sometimes he'd build a church, sometimes he would remodel, but he was always doing something. Funny story about my dad. Uh, I was here working at Rhema years after my dad was older, and he was building a church, and he had to steel up, and he was getting along with it. And he calls me. He says, son, I need some help. And I was like, well, what's the problem, Dad? He said they came out here and said I got to have a permit. And I was like, yeah, you got to have a permit. What was funnier than that? He didn't even have plans. So yes, it was a different time, and building a committee, he didn't really do that. He had some people who would have input, but it is key in churches today that you do build a committee, and you get people on that committee that are of good character, that work well with you, with the pastor, with the team. They're team players. They have the heart of the church. They're good decision makers, good character, uh, respectful to one another. All those things are a big deal, and they have seen things that would enhance this process. Now let me say this, and this is really hard for a lot of churches as far as when they do a committee. I had a good friend, and he was doing a church project in really large church, and so he asked everybody what they need or what they want in their department. Well, there was no way you could ever build that building. And then you got to go back and you got to go through it with each team member and tell them what they can't have.
Yes.
And that becomes a very, very long process. So you'll see in some of our other videos about budgeting, you should start with a budget and then come down with a few needs that you got to have. Like you may have a budget that will support a sanctuary, but it don't support classrooms and all these other things. And if you ask people what they need, then they're going to get involved, and they're going to address all those needs, which you don't have the money to do anyway.
Yes.
So, I think limiting some of those conversations will help you. You can't have everybody on the committee, and everybody don't get everything they want. I've built churches that are 250,000 square feet, seat 5,000, and nobody got everything they wanted.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
that continues. As you get into church, you continue to get more things and build educational wings or whatever.
Yes, and that's kind of not on the subject today, but I know one thing that we encourage churches to do is to really plan, you know, write down your vision. It may be more than what you can do right now, but you can always phase it.
Yeah. One thing we were doing recently, and we're working with a large committee, and which is a little bit unusual for us, but this is a large committee. And one thing they came up with, which I thought was a great idea, we had the church, and then there was several things they really wanted. And we figured the cost of those, we put them in the plans, and then each one will be put before the congregation and see maybe they can raise the money for it. Now, let's say, for an example, that you may be doing a church, and your committee knows you need a drive-through. And you put that on the plans, you put a price on it, and if you can raise the money in the church, you add it to the project.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it was a great idea.
It gets the church involved. It gets, they get to actually vote with their money on the things that they really would like to see.
Yes.
And so it also gives them some ownership of the project and kind of helps them to buy in, and I'm sure that helps the pastor as well because they raise more money and everybody's happy. They get what they want.
Yeah. And when you start and you have a committee, the committee is really good in the planning process. That's where they should be used. But then the next step would be that you're going to either hire somebody or somebody on the committee or somebody on the staff would be what we would consider the owner's rep. And the owner's rep is somebody that needs the same thing. They need to be good character. They need to be a problem solver. I don't really see them in the day-to-day decision making in the building. That stuff should be done, and allow your contractor and architect to do the work they need to do. But on the other hand, there's a lot of questions that come up every day that need to be answered, that need to be okayed from the church standpoint. This person is ideal to do that, and person you got a lot of confidence in.
Yeah, and the one reason why we suggest that you have this person is that it's hard on the pastor to continue doing his daily duties and visiting people in the hospital and preparing his sermons and, you know, running the church, and also have to have the demand of answering all the questions that need to be answered on a day-to-day basis during the construction project. So if they do hire that owner's representative, if I'm saying this correctly, then that helps to take some pressure off of them so they can continue to do their job as a pastor and not be so involved in the day-to-day of the construction.
You know what? One thing is, a church will go into a building program. Let's say the church takes in $1 million a year. Well, that's a good sized budget. But this next year, when they build a church, they're going to do $4 or $5 million worth of work. So they're going to do 5 times what they did last year. That's an extreme amount of work.
Oh yeah.
Increase on that staff. So having this person to help out with that and to oversee it is a big help to the church.
Yeah, and the reason why the church is there is for ministry. So the building is supposed to help them to do ministry. So you don't want this building process to take away from the purpose from doing the ministry.
And I think that was a big deal with my father. You know, even though it was small churches and there were small projects, it did take it away from ministry. I mean, to go out and actually build the church and then have to go preach and have to visit the hospital and do those things, it did take away from what he did ministry-wise. And that was a big deal for me, seeing what he did and how what I do and what we do can help churches.
Yeah, so that's basically where your heart to help churches came from, was from knowing that it was hard on your dad to have to pastor and build, and so we feel like it's our call, and that's why you started it, is to take that pressure off of the pastors.
Yes. And the thing about building is problems. It's nothing but problems, and we're problem solvers. That's what we do. That's what you encounter every day. There's going to be somebody sick, somebody hurt, plans don't fit, budget don't fit, something don't work right, and somebody didn't show up. And all those things happen. That's why we love to help churches. Then the owner's rep is a big help to us. We like that relationship. And I've worked real close with pastors where they were kind of the owner's rep, where we did work directly with them, and we became the owner's rep for them. I like doing that. We can make that transition and help you with that.
Now, also, whenever a church gets ready, when we're talking about building their team, you know, part of their team is their part, you know, the people in the church that they're going to put on their committees and things like that. And you've talked about some specific characteristics that they need to look for, but also they need some professionals on their team.
Yes.
And so one of the first professionals that we recommend that they hire, especially if they're looking to buy a piece of property, and we've got another video on that, just on buying property and location, things you need to know about that. But they need to hire a civil engineer.
Yes.
So, and what exactly, talk a little bit about what the civil engineer is going to do for them and why he's important to be on their team.
Yeah. You know, Rachel, that brings up an important question in my mind, is because I would tell you to hire a civil engineer, hire an architect, hire a builder. But in what we do, we ask churches to hire us.
Yes.
And not that that's the way everybody should do it, but in hiring what we like to do is you hire us, we create a budget that you can live by. Then we pull all those pieces together, the civil, the architect, us as a builder. So yes, hire a civil engineer right off the bat, hire an architect. Now, The problem I have with just hiring an architect, and I see this happen a lot, churches will go out, they'll hire an architect. It seems like the right thing to do, and nothing derogatory towards architects. And then they will design a building, and they've got it backwards in the fact that the architect's going to do a good job most cases. However, you've not considered budget all the way through it. And what we like to do is consider budget first, know kind of where you stand financially, then hire an architect, or we have architects that work with us. We employ them to start working on your project with budget in mind in every step of the way.
Yes.
It concerns me when churches buy land with no insight on budget. They don't see the budget at the beginning.
Yes.
It concerns me when architects are hired to draw a nice set of plans, and only to find that the owner can't build them.
Well, it kind of goes back to the committee issue that you said. When the committee, when the pastor you knew went to the church and asked for all their ideas, they came back with, and it's not that the ideas were bad,
Oh.
but they could have never built that building. So, as well as when the church goes with all their ideas to an architect, he's going to design that, and there's
That's
a fee involved in that. There's a cost, and they pay that. But then when it comes down to the actual dollars and cents, sometimes it doesn't fit into what they can actually afford.
Yes.
So that's what makes the system kind of backwards. And
Yep.
you're saying, go get to your budget first. Find out
Yes.
how much you can design, how much you can
Well,
build,
Yes.
and then design around that,
Design around it.
the amount of money that you're going to have to use.
A story, I think it's a funny story, but I was working with a pastor, and we were in a meeting with architects, and he told the architect everything he wanted. Budget was not a concern, and so we came back a few months later and had some preliminary drawings, and he said that's going to cost $70 million, and I was like, no, that's going to cost $100 million,
Yeah.
and he was really shocked. But him going in said budget was no concern. And I'm telling you, architects are very, very good at designing a vision, and they're just good at what they do.
So they can make it look pretty, but can you really afford it? So you got to get down to the budget. Now, one thing we want to talk about is when we're helping the pastors today to hire their team. When they get ready to hire their architect, what are some things that they need to think about? If it's not something you do every day, it's rare that people do building projects multiple times in their
Yes,
life, like
yes,
we do. I
yes.
mean, you've built lots of projects, but for most pastors, this may be their first or second, time to ever build. So what should they think about when they're looking for an architect? Of course, we'd like for them to hire us, and we can help them through the whole project, but if they're going to go and hire someone else, what
Yes.
do they need to think about?
One of the first things is that have they built a church? Has an architect drawn a church? A lot of people think, well, they've drawn a bus station, they've drawn a bank, they've done hotels and condos or whatever, but have they drawn a church? Because church has unique things about what they do: sound, lights, video, seating, all that is important.
Yes.
Aisle spacing. Some churches want a lot of room to the front where they pray for people. Some churches don't do that at all. And you get an architect who attends a Catholic church would be a lot different than one who attends a Baptist church.
Mm-hmm.
And so make sure they've done churches, make sure they're up on that part of it. See some of their designs, look at what they're designing. And I'll tell you this, I would go, if I'm a church, and find designs I already like.
Yeah.
So they're way ahead, and they can say, this is what
This
we
is what I
already
like.
like. And that will save you a lot of time with an architect, rather than him doing 4 or 5 schemes and none of them you like.
Mm-hmm.
If you show him something you like, he's going to be way ahead. Are they reputable? Do they do a good job? Will they work for the church? A lot of times the complaint I hear, and I hear a lot of complaints about builders too, so it's not just architects, but one I hear is they're not doing what I want them to do. All the stuff they draw is not what I want. So you need to find somebody who will leave his ego outside and be humble enough to say, okay, you don't like that, what do you like? We'll try again. We're going to get there. And that's the big issue for me. I mean, we work with architects all the time. We have some we really like, and the ones that I really do like is they do leave their ego at the door. They're not trying to design something for themselves. They're trying to design for the church. That's very, very important. Um, the one question that I hear all the time, and it's the most troubling question, and I hear it about us, and I hear it about architects. We'll go to a meeting in the church. The first thing they'll say is well, what's the architect going to charge? Is it going to be 5, 6, 7%? What's his fees? And that's one of the worst questions that we hear, and this is why. Um, let's say you got an architect and he's going to charge you 6%, another one's going to charge you 7%, and the church thinks automatically, man, he's 1% less. Let's hire him. We're good to go. Everything's good. Well, you really need to think about the type of buildings he designed, and will they come in on budget for what you're doing? There's all types of architects. There's some that are great at design. There's some. The architect I worked with, Ross McCready, I'm telling you, he was so good on details. He's the best I've ever worked with, and he was just excellent at details. And there's different styles and different types of architects. And if you were to have one who would come in and design your building, and he's 1% less, but he over-designed your building, and all of a sudden you spent 20% more in the building, who was really cheaper? The other side of that is you hire an architect, and he don't have the experience he needs, or he don't have the staff he needs, and all of a sudden you've left things out of the plans, or it's taking too long, the project's dragging on, and it ends up costing you more money. Now, a big issue that we have from contractors to architects, and you get them blaming one another, but if you as a contractor, you have questions on a set of plans, and you're sending them to an architect, but you're not getting an answer, all of a sudden it's causing delays. But the contractor's contract is with the owner, so he's going to start going to the owner for delays, and he's going to want more money. So there's a lot of dynamic that goes into hiring an architect and hiring a team and finding the team that you can work with.
And that brings about another thought to me, is that, a church is not necessarily a restaurant or a multi-story office building. It has specific needs. But also churches nowadays, some of the churches we're building, they do have coffee shops in them where they
Yes.
need, I know we did a project last year where they had a large commercial kitchen. I mean, probably the biggest that went in the state of Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
And so talk a little bit about what is and what people are putting in churches now.
Yes. We focus a lot on sound, lights, and video because that's what you see right up front, and that's how you minister to the word. But yes, people are doing Starbucks equal coffee. I mean, it's equivalent to any Starbucks you see. They're doing offices, they're doing conference rooms, they're doing retreat areas, and kitchens are a big deal. Just about every church we do is going to have some sort of commercial kitchen, and the smaller churches are trying to get by without going commercial in the kitchen, and we try to work through that because it's so expensive.
Yeah.
But yes, we did one last year that would be as I forget. I think they were feeding 1,000 at a time. Huge kitchen. So it's not just church anymore.
Yeah.
It's recording studios. It's
TV
TV studios.
yeah.
Offices, elevators, escalators we put in churches now.
Well, and we even did a 2-story play area, like McDonald's kind of style play area in a church as well. So, I mean, and we've done expansive children's areas with all the theming and things of that nature. So it really is important, when we're talking about getting your team together, getting the right team members, because, when you do have commercial kitchens and extensive theming and the sound, lights, and video production type stuff, those all require their specialty areas.
Yes.
And so you need the right team on board to make sure that they come out, excellent. We want to project excellence And so, that's a whole nother level of putting your team together. And I guess the next person on the team that we want to talk a little bit about today, we've talked about getting your engineers and your architects and your committee, but what about getting your contractor on board?
No, we don't want to talk about the contract.
Yes, we're going to talk about ourselves today a little bit. So, what do they need to think about when hiring a contractor? What are some good questions and even some pitfalls that we see that churches think, oh, I'm going to ask this question and this is going to tell me what I need to know. And there's one particular I'm thinking of.
First thing you do is you find somebody that other people have used or you feel really comfortable with. Then you check their references. You go see their work. Go on their projects. I would recommend going on a project before it's even finished to see how clean, what's going on the job. Is it safe? All these things matter. You think, well, we just hire a contractor and they take care of it. But if they have a major catastrophe, a loss of life, anything like that, it's going to come back on the church. And even if it don't financially, it's going to come back on them just from the talk of the town. Somebody's killed on that project. It's not going to go over very well.
Well, and just emotionally, I can't imagine if that happened on a project I was in charge of, or that, my church, it would affect the pastor, the members of the church. It's just something that you wouldn't want to happen.
Yep. So I would go see their work. I would make sure that, that they pay their bills.
That's a big deal.
That's really easy to find out.
Yes.
You can go call suppliers that they use and see if they pay their bills on time, ethically and morally, they're working right. Then you kind of move into another step of that is you want a contractor who will identify all costs. What you see most of the time is a church or a business will ask a contractor, well, what will this building cost? And they'll give them a number. Well, it costs so much this or so much of that. But you need more of a developer's mindset in the fact that I need all the costs. I need all the development costs. I need the utilities. I need city planning. And I need the furniture on the end. I do need the children's playground equipment.
Yeah.
So you need to incorporate all that cost, and you need the contractor to help you with that. And some contractors aren't good at that. They're good at their building. They're good at monitoring their costs, but they're not good at identifying other costs. Then the other thing comes down to the bad question the church will ask is how much per square foot.
Yeah.
How much is this building going to cost us a square foot? Is it going to be $100? Is it going to be $50 a square foot? And that's really a bad question. I would work more towards identifying all costs, and then that's going to uncover what the square foot price really is. If you go and you base your decision that this guy said he could do it for $100 a square foot or $150, and you say, well, that's just really cheap, well, probably what you'll get is something really cheap. And that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for a fair price, and you're looking for all the elements of the project to be included. So when you're going about pricing, there's a lot more discovery into that. What do you want? What kind of windows do you want? What kind of locks? What kind of hardware? Are you going to do keyless entry? Are you going to spend $500,000 on your sound lights and video? Are you going to spend $100,000? And what kind of chairs do you want? Do you want theater seats? Do you want so a whole lot of discovery goes into this. And are there any problems on your site? Are there any unique things that the city's going to require you to do? You need to know all those things so that you don't get a building half built. I had a guy I know personally who got in a building project, and they hadn't done those things. They hadn't met with the city, and he had his building up. And this is the most extreme case I've ever heard. They actually made him tear his building down, and it cost him millions of dollars.
Wow.
And put this guy in such a dire situation. And it was because that the contractor had not done the things that he was supposed to have done.
Yeah.
And it was unbeknown to the pastor.
Well, I mean, really, it could ruin a ministry. I mean,
yes.
that we're not talking about small amounts of money. I mean, it can be millions of dollars, like in this case. And I mean, even the the church, it ruins the pastor's credibility with his congregation, and that's what we don't want to see happen.
Yep.
Because this is about expanding ministry and reaching more people, not tearing down ministry.
Yes. The I think the last thing I would talk about with contractors is check their stability, their financial stability. You can ask for financial statements. You can ask for audited or reviews. Most time we do reviewed ones. But if they're reluctant to give you financial statements and let you see where they are, chances are they're not really stable. And so that's one of the big questions I would ask.
Yes. So the biggest thing is do your homework. When you're hiring an architect or you're hiring a builder or any kind of consultant, do some research on them. Don't just pick somebody out of the hat and throw your money at them, but make sure you follow it up. Get references.
Yes.
Call their references. Go see the buildings they've built. Even if it takes traveling to another location, it sounds like it's well worth the money you'd spend to go on that trip.
Yes.
To make sure that you're getting the right person on your team. And there's nothing like, I've been a member of a team. I played sports when I was younger, many years ago. But there's nothing like having the right team.
That's right.
And you get the right people on a team. It's amazing just that how everything works so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, I don't know if you've ever been on a team where it just wasn't the right team members, just not the right fit, and things just don't work well together.
Yes.
And I know one thing you always say too is, you're about to marry me, you better like me.
Yes.
And so, one thing is that when you pick your team, this project will take a while.
It takes a while.
It's really a process. That's another thing you tell pastors is, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
That's right.
And so, make sure that you will like your team members, because in a sense, you are marrying them for a time period. Yes. And you want to make sure that this is a good process for everybody involved. Yes. And it does work better when they like us. It makes our job more enjoyable.
There's a trust there that you need, and you got to have that trust. One thing I would say is the last thing that we want to see you do is make a bad decision that will cost you your whole ministry, cost the church they're building. And these are really critical decisions. You're dealing with millions and millions of dollars. You're dealing with life safety issues. These are critical decisions that you'll make. And we hear the horror stories. I'm sure you've heard them. We don't want you to make those bad decisions.
Yes. And now, one thing in the process of building your team I'd like to talk a little bit about is the concept of design build. It's kind of a big thing right now. Some pastors may not have heard about it, but it really is in our industry. And tell a little bit about what it is. And we are a design build company. And what made you decide that this is the best way to do it?
Yes. Well, we lean towards design build, and the reason being is, actually, I built Rhema Bible Church, and I went to work for Kenneth Hagin Ministries. I think it was in '98, and they put together a really good team.
It was in 1990.
90,
yeah.
That's right. Anyway, they put together a really good team. They had an architect, they had myself, and the owners. And in doing that, I really liked that situation, because we all worked for the best interest of the owner, and it just worked out really nice. Well, then leaving Rhema, and I was in the construction business even before I went there. It was such an adversarial relationship to where you went out and you hire an architect, and then you go bid the work. So the low bidder gets the work. Then he comes in and he looks for every reason he can charge you more money, and in doing that, it puts the church in a bad position, because you try to pit the owner against the architect against the owner and the builder, and it becomes just an adversarial relationship. So we do some churches where the architect's driving it, but we saw the benefit to do design build, to where we could take a budget, hold the budget, bring in the team members, and work directly for the owners for one cause, and that was to build them a building that they liked, that they really liked, and get it on a budget and at the right time. So I think that design build will help you stay on budget better than any other way. I think that it'll help you stay on schedule better than any other way. So we like doing design build. We do it other ways. Really, we don't have something we won't do, but we would try to bring you into design build to help you to get the things you want and get the most for your money. And I really do believe that that's the way I can get you the most for your money.
Yeah, now design build, some of the benefits of design build is you have one, especially for the church, one point of responsibility. So instead of, like you said, going to the architect and going to the builder and everybody's saying, well, this person did it, and well, that's not my responsibility, that's that one. You go to the design builder.
Yes.
And it is their responsibility to get whatever the problem is resolved.
Yes.
And they can't say, well, but that's the architect, or but that's, because they are all of those things. And so you have one source of responsibility that you go to and you deal with, so it cuts down on a lot of the back and forth. Also, one thing is that in design build, you get your value engineering up front.
Yes.
And I know this is something that you always say, you're not going to save them any money once you start building, because
Yes.
everything's already been picked. I mean, you might be able to cut a little here and a little there, but the real savings is during the planning process. Talk a little bit about that.
Yesterday I was on a project, and they were telling me that we're in the planning stage, and they said, we would like to add a second story over some of our classrooms so that we can have some storage up there. And so in this process, value engineering and all, we'll come back, give them numbers of what it costs to do that before we even incorporate it in the plans. Now, if they say that they can afford that, then we'll start down that road. They may not actually end up doing it, but we'll have it on the plan so that they can do it. And then in the value engineering, it just helps a lot that we identify everything. For instance, the owner says, they like a lot of glass. By the time the designer gives us an elevation of the building, shows us the glass, we're giving them a price, and we're showing them whether that's going to drive the number up or take the number down. Then we might eliminate some glass. We might not put some in the back of the building that we were going to put to get them on a budget that they like. Still giving them the building they like and doing it in a costly manner. I believe this is the most peaceful process going through design build. Our goal is to have pastors to where they're at peace through this process, that they lean on us, they believe in what we're doing, and they don't have a lot of questions. They're not waking up at night saying, I wonder about this, I wonder about that, do I need to call so-and-so? No, believe we're taking care of it. This design build process will give you that.
And this is kind of part of what the side of what we do that's a ministry.
Yes.
It's because we believe that it is a ministry to pastors so that they can continue doing their ministry. Mm-hmm. And, this is our ministry. And, you're supposed to use the gifts and talents that God gives you, and ours are not in preaching or public speaking maybe, but our guys are gifted and talented in construction, and so we believe that we use that to help pastors and to be a blessing to churches. We want to thank you for joining us today in the Building Smart, Building Your Team Before You Build, Building Forward video series. If you'd like more information you're looking to build, please feel free to contact us through our website. God bless you and have a great day.